Mr. Bison Flips!
Mr. Bison Flips! Mr. Bison Flips! Mr. Bison Flips!
I want to start with a little brief overview of the Greek theatre, historically, what it was, what role theatre played, and sort of the context of where the performances were played out. We're obviously dealing with early Greek, ancient Greek times. Antigone is from about 433 BC, and so Oedipus Rex is slightly younger than that. Antigone was written first, but so we're looking at about 435-ish. This is a classic amphitheater structure. We've got the theatron in the background, which is where the audience sat, and then the orchestra, the flat area where the actual performance took place, and the remaining wall up the front of the picture is this bit here. This bit here is the remainder of the skene, the change room. So if we look at that from above, it will look something like this. So we've got the skene down the bottom here, the orchestra where the acting took place is here, and then obviously the theatron up here is the area where the actors themselves were. On the edges here we've got what's called the parados, which is where the actors would have entered and exited to and from the stage. The other two things that we cannot see on the image is the Deus Ex Machina, which was a kind of a crane that was usually attached to the skene and used. Literally the meaning of Deus Ex Machina is God from the machine. And so that was essentially a way to kind of introduce divine intervention into the play by either having Zeus or Athena or one of the big gods to come into the drama, or alternatively pull an actor out to represent that they had been elevated to some sort of godlike status. The other thing that we can't see on here is the ekkykleme, which is essentially was a trolley that was used primarily for removing corpses, or rather bringing them in actually. So because originally the orchestra was not to be soiled by unsavory things. So for one thing, women were not allowed on stage, nor was there allowed to be any violence or killing in the performances, but rather that would happen behind the skene. And the Greek word for behind is ob. And so obskene has become the word obscene that we have today, which essentially means just something is not suitable to be in the public domain. And so rather than having the killing happen on stage, if a character was about to die, they would usually go off stage, have their dying moment, and then someone would put them on the ekkyklema and bring them back onto stage and say, hey, look, this person has perished off stage. Thereby we avoided the whole obscene action taking place on stage. In terms of the actors, they would be equipped in the following attire roughly. They'd wear a highly stylized mask depending on what figure they were playing. So various characters would have a particular mask, and you can see all the mouths are kind of in a similar type of shape. They're kind of roundish, and in a very stylized sort of facial expression to show what emotions these characters are generally embodying. Furthermore, they kind of like funneled in the back, which would allow them to project their voices even better up the theatron, to make sure that everyone in the audience heard the actors very well, because obviously there's no sound equipment available to them. The other thing that they would wear were kind of high wooden shoes called kothoni, which essentially are kind of high clogs that would give them slightly more elevation, make them a little bit taller, a bit more visible, and also a bit more status on the stage. And then they would kind of cover that with a big set of robes. If we move on to the actual structure of the drama, Aristotle was kind of the man who set the rules for this. He wrote a book called Poetics, where he kind of outlines how an effective drama should be constructed and what elements it should be consisting of. So essentially he identified 6 elements that had to be in a drama. There had to be a plot, there had to be a theme, there needed to be characters, there needed to be a choice of diction. There should be some kind of musical element in the performance, and then of course there was a spectacle, which is to us is kind of props as well as action, etc. So all the things that are there to entertain. And all these things had to come together and form what he called the three unities. It was really crucial to have the play should be complete, it should be resolved, and it should end with some kind of cathartic revelation where the characters learn something about themselves. So in order to achieve that, the play had to have three types of unities. There had to be a unity of time, a unity of place, and a unity of action. And these had to come together. This means that the play essentially had to take place over 24 hours, one day. It should take place only in one location, and there should only be one plot, so no kind of sub-stories along the way there. So you'll find in these kind of dramas, so when you read Oedipus or later on Antigone, that in terms of time, generally the play will start at a point and then lead on to kind of the end of the play. They might be talking about things that have happened in previous days, but they're not actually going to. The play itself is contained within this kind of one day of action, right? So that's the time unity. In terms of place, again, all of this that we're seeing in that scene there, all takes place in the one place. So all of this, in the case of Oedipus, happens in the city of Thebes. Even though they talk about when I lived in these other places, we don't actually move the place. And same thing with the action, everything happens in the city of Thebes. In terms of historical context, the drama was usually part of a big kind of theatre type festival. And the biggest theatre festival of them all was the City Dionysia, which was held in Athens, usually in March every year, which is kind of, if you think Northern Hemisphere, is the time when we plant our seeds. It's the time of fertility. So essentially it's a celebration of Dionysus, who is the god of wine, but also the god of fertility and growths. So you essentially planted your seeds and you celebrated Dionysus so that he would make sure that your crops would be plentiful, etc. So it was a week-long festival. It started with a parade up to the Dionysian statue up on the mountainside, and they would sing dithyrambics and really sort of celebrate the god in his many ways. And then eventually, after much celebration and much wine, etc., which came with that celebration, they would return to the theatres, and there was a competition between three playwrights. And so each day, one playwright would put on 3 tragedies and 1 satyr play, which is kind of more of a comedy type thing, or light-hearted play. So that one day would be Sophocles, and the next day might be Euripides, and the next day would be someone else. And then between the 3 of them, one winner would be appointed on the final day. There was also in that same festival a competition for comedies, which essentially is not a comedy the way we perceive it, but just a play with a happy ending, as opposed to a tragedy that does not have a happy ending, but rather some sort of cathartic moment where mostly central characters die, and then whoever survives has a big realization about what it means to keep living or something. So the comedies will have a happy ending. And then there might also be some choral ode performances accompanied by flutes, etc. If we look at the actual performance, initially, really, a play was a choral presentation. You went to just to hear sort of the chorus sing songs on a particular theme, and they would be philosophical or have to do with kind of what it meant to be human and what relation man should have to the gods, etc. And then at one point, an actor separated from the play. I think we're talking roughly 485, 490 BC. An actor stepped out of the play, and there was kind of an engaging interchange between the two, and we sort of developed a dialogue between the chorus and this one actor. And then Aeschylus, about 470 BC, introduced a second actor, so we had sort of an interplay between the actors as well as the chorus, and the chorus then became more the voice of reason, or the voice of the god, or the moral voice of the plays. And then, of course, Sophocles became groundbreaking when he introduced a third actor, which meant you could have exchange between two characters, and the third character could judge them, and then the chorus could be another layer on top of that to judge the actors, which meant there was much more room for what we would call tension and drama than there was before. Generally, a tragedy would have a sad outcome. It would be a well-known story to the people. They didn't go there to find out what would happen in the story, but rather to see how it was delivered, see the eloquence of the dialogue, see the beauty of the poetry, and be entertained in that fashion. And of course, as we said before, there were no women and no violence allowed on stage because that was considered obscene.